discussion with those other fellow Muslims, well-meaning, there is no reason whatsoever to doubt anybody's intentions. But the fact of the matter is that they do feel convinced that religion is not based on intellect. Intellect should not be employed for the purpose of understanding it, and intellect, when employed for the purpose of practicing it, it just takes you away. So, how to engage in a discussion? Luckily, this second school of understanding presents certain religious arguments which are presented with a claim that you look at them and you find that those arguments are mentioning the reality that you're not supposed to use your intellect. So what I'm going to do now in this second session is that I will present before you the arguments of those who believe that intellect is not desired to be used, applied for the purpose of understanding and practicing religion. So as I said in the first session, my session is going to be divided into two parts. At the end of each presentation, I will encourage you to ask questions, and then I'll begin the second part. In the first part, I will present the arguments one by one, some of the arguments. Obviously, it's not an exhaustive presentation of everything that those people say, but some of the important arguments that they present in order to convince themselves and others that religion, Islam, is not based on intellect. The first of the arguments is sometimes accompanied by the presentation of this verse and sometimes not. But the basic idea is that faith is blind. When you believe because your ancestors believe. When you believe because your tradition says that. When you believe, you do it because you have the confidence that the society that you are a part of, it has a system of beliefs. It has a religion. And you accept it. And you're confident that it's right. But that confidence is not based on your intellectual understanding of the presentation of the belief. Your confidence is based on your sincerity, your attachment to the message, your practice of it, the sacrifices that you make, your involvement in the activities of the group of people who share your beliefs. So, when you are going to use your intellect, you're going to waver, you will get distracted, you will be led away. So, you believe in what is required to be believed in because it's a blind faith. It's not something that you can understand through your intellect. So, this verse is presented sometimes that God-conscious people, muttaqeen, are those allazina yu'minuna bil ghaib, who believe bil ghaib. The understanding of bil ghaib is presented sometimes in a manner that it really is equivalent of blind faith. So what they say is that is why, in order to completely settle the argument, the Almighty has presented this verse right at the beginning of the Quran, so that people should know that let's not be worried about this issue. You believe, and it's a blind belief. There is this second argument which is presented sometimes by these people who say that the Almighty has Himself mentioned in the Quran that you're not supposed to ask questions. La tas'alu an ashya in tubda lakum tasukkum. Believers don't ask about matters which, if they were revealed, will cause harm to you. So, better receive what is being given to you. Take it sincerely. Don't doubt. When you use your intellect and you start asking questions, what you're doing is that you are doubting what is being given to you by God. So value it and take it the way it is. Focus your attention. If at all you want to use your intellect, focus your attention on understanding what the message is and take it properly. But don't ask questions. That is the second of the arguments that is sometimes presented. Probably the most forcefully presented case of following religion without using intellect is the one which is mentioned in a number of verses, similarly worded verses. But this one is probably a good sample representation of all those verses, which is that the Almighty is requiring believers to listen and obey. So here again it says, Innamal qawlal mu'minun. Believers don't, Quran emphasizes believers should listen and obey. The response of true believers who are called by the Prophet to decide about them is nothing but Sami'na wa ata'na. We hear and we obey. Such are the people who are successful or who are going to be successful. That is, had the emphasis been on using intellect, the Almighty would have said that look here, good believers are the ones who listen to the message that is given to them, then they think about it, they ponder and reflect, they try to find out as to whether it's making sense to them or not, and then after they are satisfied, then they practice it. What the Quran on the contrary is saying is that the Almighty expects the believers to just listen and obey. So it's a negation of the possibility of using intellect even though you have been presented with the message of God. I mean, the message is now with you. You should hear, find out what it is and follow it. So that again is considered and understood to be a very important indication of the fact that a religion is not based on intellect, and you will spoil your faith and your commitment by using your intellect, because that is not going to allow you to focus on following it. And the Quran repeatedly says that the right attitude of the believer is that he says, Sami'na wa ata'na. We hear and we obey. A fourth argument is presented to claim that the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, himself strongly discouraged discussion on predestination. There were companions who were talking about it, and it is said that when he heard about it and he saw them, he was extremely upset, and he expressed his displeasure at what was happening, and he said that the people who came before you, they went astray and they were destroyed because of the fact that they got indulged in such discussions of predestination. I tell you to stop it. So what they say is that when such a clear statement has been made by the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, about religious matters, and predestination is very much one aspect of religious understanding, and you say that you get faith out of discussion, you get faith out of using intellect. Here it is just the very opposite of that, what is being mentioned. And the Prophet is admonishing people who are using their intellect. So how on earth can you claim that intellect is very important to be used for the purpose of understanding God's religion? Finally, there is yet another argument which is presented through a quotation attributed to Ali radiallahu anhu, the companion of the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, who was a great scholar of Islam. And he is reported to have said that in masa, rubbing of socks, which is a concession available when you are wearing socks, forget about what the dispute is. There are some people who say that it should be socks of one kind and the other say it has to be another kind of socks, but that's not a part of the discussion right now. Whatever be the socks, whatever be the nature of the socks, the fact of the matter is that sometimes, in some cases, we are allowed to not wash our feet for wudu ablution. Instead, it would suffice if you rub your hand on the socks instead, and that would be good enough. So the statement attributed to Ali Radhiyallahu anhu is that had religion been based on intellect, we would have been commanded to wipe our socks in masa from below. So what he says is that the socks get soiled from beneath, in the lower part of the socks, not the other upper parts. If religion was based on intellect, it should have been the lower part of the socks instead that should have been required to be rubbed rather than the one above, which, when we know that is the case, shows the reality that God's religion is based on hukum, on command, and not on intellect. We receive the command from the Almighty, and the Almighty has chosen His prophets for the purpose of giving the instructions that He wants them to follow. He has given those instructions. Now, there is no reason why intellect should be unnecessarily brought in. It is going to cause confusion, and people, instead of doing what is expected from them, are going to be led astray. These are only 5 of the arguments that I have presented. As far as blind faith is concerned, it is also sometimes mentioned that one of the more intellectually inclined, intelligent, philosophically thinking scholars of Islam, who is a very outstanding exegete, mufassir of the Quran as well, and is also known to be a philosopher, Imam Razi. His incident is sometimes quoted. Imam Razi, as I said, is known to be the representative of the people, the school of thought who emphasize rational thinking, use of intellect in religion. So goes the story that when Imam Razi was at his deathbed, Satan came to him to ask him whether he believed in God. And he said, "Why not? I do." And Satan asked him, "What are your arguments?" So he presented one argument, and Satan demolished it. He presented another, destroyed. A third one gone. A fourth one kicked. A fifth one out of the window. So all his whatever number of arguments that he had in his mind at the time, a desperate time of his death when he was about to leave, all intellectual arguments were given a treatment that they deserved. And finally, when he was left with no argument, Imam Razi said, "I believe because my mother believed." And he said, "La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah," and died the death of a believer. So you are basing your religion on intellect and intellectual arguments. Look at one of the most outstanding persons in the area of intellectual reasoning, and when he died, he was left with nothing. And ultimately, he had to make use of his blind faith, which is what religion is based on. So these are some of the important arguments that are presented by our Muslim brothers and sisters, friends who As a consequence of these arguments, they claim that you should not bother to use your intellect. Instead, you should just follow what has been required. It is also the same attitude, reason, which then inclines people to follow a certain policy in following religion, in adopting and practicing religion, which has come to be described as taqleed, blind acquiescence, blindly following scholars, because you have no business whatsoever to use your intellect. When you will use it without being a scholar, you will be led astray. All that you need to do is that you pick a scholar or a group of scholars and just follow them back. Taqleed by definition means that you are following the scholar that you have decided to pick to follow without asking for justification, without asking for reason. At least I can tell you that in the subcontinent, this is the predominant approach of a vast majority of Muslims who practice religion. They believe that they have to choose a scholar, which in most cases is already chosen by virtue of where they are born, by virtue of where they live. And you need to have confidence in your scholar. You need to respect him. You need to just understand more and more what he's saying. And the moment you have a question or a doubt, it is an indication at least of a weakness of your faith and your commitment. So that is what is the understanding, and obviously because it's all based on textual reasoning in most cases, we need to understand what is then the truth. I have already presented before you a few verses of the Quran, which apparently it seems are talking about the fact that it is intellect that should cause you to believe. It is intellect that is going to be the reason why you're going to be accountable. If people do not use their intellect, they are considered by the Almighty as worse than beasts. And on the other hand, this is a very strong understanding, which is absolutely the contrary, poles apart. Very few other ideas could be quite as contrary to each other, conflicting, as the fact that there is one school of thought which is saying that religion is based on intellect, and other which is saying that it is just the very opposite. And you raised your hand at the very right time. I had not even a single word left to say. Yeah.
Also, you have mentioned two categories of people. The people who doesn't believe in following on the ayahs, and the other people are saying that yes, we have to follow. Let's disregard the first category. Let's stay within the domain of the people who believes that we should be following on the ayahs and the sunnah. There's an example. At the Prophet times, time of the Prophet, if I am a firm believer and I believe in the Prophet, and he says, give some instructions as a part of the deen to me. Now, will I use my intellect first? If the instructions are compatible to my intellect, then I will accept it. Or the other way around would be, I will accept the instructions and then will follow and have the lead of the Prophet at that time.
You know, the reason I am slightly nervous as to whether to answer your question or not is not that I don't want to answer your question. The reason is that for selfish reasons, I have a second presentation which is going to take care of what you're saying. But I think I cannot present this excuse now. Because if I'm not going to answer the question now, I don't know whether we'll have a meaningful discussion in anything else. Because obviously what these people say is pretty much obvious. So let me try to briefly answer what you asked me. And maybe I'll do it again, and probably I'll try not to be repetitive more than what you can digest. You see, the thing is that it is simply not rational, logical, intellectually sound to say that you have accepted an institution, let's say this college, for admission on the basis of whatever your analysis is. And then you come and say that I have sought admission and I've been given admission, but I'm going to follow whatever I think is right. I will not follow the system. I think this is obviously not what any rational person can say. There are certain things you accept, and it is in the very nature of what you accepted that thereafter you follow what you are required to do, because that is what exactly it means that you accepted. But as I said, this is one of the things that I'm going to mention later.
Obviously, Taqlid has been a very big subject and has been covered. If we put ourselves in the shoes of people who actually suggested to do Taqlid, is it not right to assume that the way it is practiced today is not how they have envisaged? Because I felt that the reason why they have insisted on people doing Taqlid was to spoon-fed people, which was largely not as educated, and to bring them up to the speed. They just said, look, the easiest way is you just do what we are saying, but we're not asking you to put away all the intellect. However, the way it has been projected today,
Right.
the way it has been practiced today seems like now we use this argument and say you just need to follow it the way we are telling you. I think the way it was started, whenever it was started, it may not have the same idea or the same purpose what it has become today. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
I think you're right. The people, the scholars who have made a more solid, deeper presentation of the case of Taqlid do make statements which justifies Taqlid and gives a presentation which is not quite as seemingly irrational as it appears now the way it is practiced. If you ask me, I do personally believe that at times you have no choice but to do Taqlid. So the idea is not that Taqlid is completely out of the question. The idea is, when should it be done? When should it be practiced?
So should that be substituted the use of intellect?
Right. That's what the question is. Now, you know, I mentioned in the first session, in response to one question, that the Almighty has mentioned in one verse from your question that we all humans are going to be accountable to God on the basis of our capacity. We have been given by the Almighty, each one of us, an intellectual capacity, the capacity to do things, the capacity to withstand pressures, difficulties, and so on. Everybody is different. That capacity is going to be decided by God and nobody else. And His decision is going to be absolutely fair, obviously. And capacity, by the way, is comprised of two components: your personality endowments, your intellect. You know, people have got their own levels of emotions on which they have control, more or less. Our psychological aspect of our personality, plus our environment, our family, our ancestors, the society we live in. So together, these two components, they impact on us to create, to make what is known as capacity. And God is going to judge us in accordance with what our capacity is, as to whether we perform as much as was expected at a minimum level or not. So He has a minimum level of performance for each one of us, decided. And He's expecting from us that given our capacity, given our limitations, we are expected to perform to a certain minimum level. Now, what I believe is that when you talk about individuals, there are three types of individuals. Talking about us from the point of view of religion. There are some people who are scholars. A religious scholar is a person who knows the religion directly. He reads the Quran and he understands it directly. He knows what other scholars have said. He has the facility, the ability, the training, the qualification to do research and to reach her conclusions. I hope you will agree that when it comes to the scholars, if they have done research in a certain area of understanding of Islam, it is the outcome of their research that they are accountable to God for. If their outcome of research, of understanding the Quran, is different from the outcome of their teacher, ustad, for example, and somebody says that although this is what I can see the Quran saying, I'll follow my teacher, this just cannot be accepted. How on earth can a person say that? For him, what he understands from the Quran directly is what God is telling him to do. And he says that, no, I'm a very ordinary person. I do what my teacher is doing. This is not acceptable. Because God is giving us His guidance. There are some people who are qualified, capable to understand what that guidance is. So if a scholar has done his research and has understood God's message directly, he must follow what he has understood as God's command. If he will not do it, then I don't know what the purpose of the Quran is. A scholar is not doing it. But everybody is not a scholar. There are many non-scholar, intelligent people. And we all hope that we belong to this category. We may not be scholars, we may not understand the Quran directly, but we are not idiots. Now, who is an intelligent person? An intelligent person is a person who, when he is confronted with a problem of which he is not an expert, but still the problem, when it gets discussed before him by the experts, he can figure out that this man is making no sense. I'm not a technical person, but he's making more sense. He who is an expert compared to three others who again are experts. The problem is mine. I have to get my laptop fixed, which by the way is true. And I have to see as to who is the person. Forget about the price. The price is the same. And I have to give it to one of the three experts. They're all experts. I'm not an expert. They tell me, this is the problem with your laptop. A tells me one thing, B tells me another, and C another. This is what we do on a regular basis. That we pick from the given number of experts who are selling their services, the one that we think is making the best sense. Despite being laypersons, completely non-technical, that's what our attitude is. Whether it's constructing a house, bridges, curing our patients, that's what we do. I mean, God forbid somebody has cancer, your relative, you would find out, who is the best person? Who are the ones who are doing the cure more effectively? And you do your research, just put the lives of your dear ones at stake just simply by taking it to one person because of no genuinely justifiable reasons. Likewise is the case of religion. Religion is a very important aspect of our life. So, if we are non-scholars but intelligent people, what we will do is that as best as possible, as much as the time and the facilities around us allow, we will listen to the arguments presented by the different scholars. Arguments are religious in nature. They are all qualified, and we will pick the understanding of the scholar who is making the best sense, who is appealing to us. Now, obviously, there are people who say that you will pick and choose the solution that will suit you more. Well, you are assuming about fellow believers something which is very unfortunate. Just tell them that you should pick what is the best, what is making more sense. And if you belong to this category, then you have to make a choice from amongst the given options, the one that appeals to you religiously the most. You cannot just say that I will follow it. I'll tell you the reason. The reason is that, let's face it, we know as well-informed Muslims that there are three important beliefs in our religion: God, Tawheed, hereafter, and Risalah, messengers, prophets. In all these three beliefs, there are differences after differences amongst scholars, qualified, well-known, and not minor differences, major, serious differences. Now you tell me that you have decided that A is your favorite scholar. Whatever he says is your religious understanding. How can you do it? There are three major sins in Islam: shirk, qatl, murder, and zina, adultery, fornication. In all these three major sins, there are certain cases wherein the scholars' views are absolutely the opposite of each other. There is one person who would say that what you are doing is absolutely fine. You are actually respecting deceased scholar, Buzurg, and good Muslim. The other person would say what you're doing is shirk, is ascribing partners with God. And one scholar would say that what you're doing is taking a human life unjustifiably. You are killing, murdering a human being, which is as bad as if you are taking the lives of the entire mankind. The other scholar, equally strong as far as credentials are concerned, would say this is jihad fi sabilillah. Go ahead, alhamdulillah, do it. There are cases when some scholars would tell you that this act is dirty, it is zina. Others would tell you this is halal. It is a very good thing for you to help out your fellow brother who wants his wife to be taken back. Now you are telling me that in this scenario, just go and follow one person blindly, consistently, all throughout, without bothering to know what his arguments are and what are the arguments of others. What is this? How is it possible? I just don't understand it. If you are an intelligent person, you will say that, wait a minute, okay, I got your point, but sir, the other person is saying that this is murder. How would you just survive? And when you listen to your scholar when you ask this question, either he says to you, just shut up and get out of this place. Or if he answers your question, his answer doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So what are you going to do? So what I'm saying is that I will present the case for tabligh there. But for a scholar, how can he do tabligh when he knows that my God in the Quran is saying something which is clearly there for me to understand? how can an intelligent non-scholar do it when he knows that the situation is very difficult, the situation is very sensitive? In the market of ideas, there are some ideas which have been accused by others to be extremely dangerous. It's like going to a pharmaceutical shop, to a place where medicine are being sold, and somebody tells you that some of these medicines you take, they might kill you. My doctor said it, so just shut up. Others, you can't risk your life. You can't risk your faith. The third possibility is, which I'm sure that you can all guess, the only one left is non-scholar, unintelligent idiot. The category to which we would not like to belong in the side. But honest to God, there are people like that. And I admit, at times I feel like as if I belong to this category in some cases. When you feel that what is being presented is what you don't understand. I mean, this scholar is saying one thing about the law of inheritance, and the other scholar is saying something else. I just don't understand. I get headache when I listen to this discussion. I can't make any head or tail out of it. It's possible. I mean, you might say the same thing about riba. He's saying one thing, say, I don't know what they're saying. This is pretty much understandable. It makes a lot of sense. It's something which is common. It happens. In all such cases, where the arguments are simply not possible for anybody to understand, taqleed is the only possible way out. You've got to do taqleed reluctantly. There's no other way out. You would pick a scholar about whom you have a feeling that he's a good scholar, he's a pious person. I have confidence in what he says, and you will do it. Sometimes, as I said, the non-scholarly intelligent people will also be forced to do it because they've got no choice. Sometimes a scholar would behave like an intelligent non-scholar because he himself has not done any direct research, so he'll pick from the choices given to him by different scholars, the one that he thinks is the best. I would not like to imagine that a scholar would sometimes behave like an unintelligent non-scholar and say that, because I've got an excuse, I don't understand, so I do the taqleed. So what I'm saying is that I am not denouncing the taqleed as a completely unacceptable way of approaching religion, completely unacceptable. But what I'm saying is that the taqleed has to be resorted to as and when needed.
So there is this ayah of Quran, Surah Tawbah, ayah 31, which says, they have taken their scholars and monks as lords besides Allah and the Messiah, the Son of Mary, and they were not commanded except to worship one God. There is no deity except Him, exalted is He above whatever they associate with Him. So how do you read this ayah?
I read exactly the way I think you believe. And let me add to this verse, the accompanying explanation in the footnote. You normally find that there is an incident mentioned wherein one of the companions of the Prophet, may God mercy on him, Adi ibn Hatim, who was the son of the famous Hatim Tai, he came to the Prophet after having learnt about this verse, and he said that I have been a Nasrani before I embraced Islam. And I can tell you, Prophet, and look at the manner, there was freedom of expression at the time of the Prophet. He said, I have been a Nasrani before I became a Muslim. This verse is saying that the Jews and the Christians, the people of the book, they have been making their scholars and monks Arbabam min dunillah, Rabb, God, Lord, besides Allah. And he said, I tell you, we didn't used to make it. A very strong, confident question. He asked the Prophet. The Quran is saying this. But I'm telling you, I have had my experience. We didn't used to do it. I don't understand this verse. The Prophet, may God mercy be on him, and he was ever, always very soft and mild, accommodating when it came to questions about religion. He would only very sparely get upset when people do something seriously wrong. And he asked him a question. He said, is it not a fact that when your scholars would say that certain thing is haram, you would say, yes, it's haram. And when they would say that certain thing is halal, you would say, yes, it's halal. Well, he said that, yes, that's what he used to do. The Prophet said that is exactly what tantamounts to making your scholars as arbabun min dunillah. The right prerogative of declaring what is haram and what is halal is only and only in the hands of God. And he expresses his understanding, his verdicts, delivers through his messengers. Nobody has the right to dictate that there are certain things which are haram and there are certain things which are halal. But obviously what God has declared as haram or halal has to be clarified through arguments. If you do not have direct access to arguments yourself, obviously scholars will do this job. Now what I'm saying is exactly trying to go by the spirit of this verse. When a scholar tells me that this is haram, and by the way, I keep telling my Muslim brothers and sisters, for God's sake, do not use this word haram as if it is something that is available to you whenever you want to threaten somebody of dire consequences and you want to scare somebody. It really has to be very carefully used, sparingly. You don't have a right to say it. Yes, you might say that, this is what the Almighty has declared haram himself, and I have a feeling that what you are doing is similar to it. You should be careful. I mean, people are so careless about it. So, the idea is that if a scholar says that this is haram, I'll ask him, how do you say that? He says something which you understand, and you seek the opinion of another scholar, and he gives another argument which makes sense to you as well. If you are an intelligent person and this argument, the exchange of views doesn't confuse you, no headaches, but you are absolutely clear that scholar B, his argument is weightier than scholar A, then following scholar A would be actually similar to making him arbabun min dunillah, because now, despite the fact that God's religion's arguments are with you, and you know that B is making more sense from a religious point of view, you are giving the authority and prerogative to A because of his status or whatever affiliations that you have with him. So, what I've suggested over here is an attempt at clarifying that I am not saying that every Muslim should take his or her own decisions. That's going to be very careless. That is not what is being suggested. We need to be as careful, cautious in our approach in understanding and following religion, that as best as we can, we should apply our intellect and find out as to what argument is making more sense. But the manner, sir, these days, we find, as you rightly pointed out, that probably it's a degenerated form of what earlier scholars had suggested. The manner it's being presented now, it seems to really mean nothing but the fact that everybody, even the scholars, are doing blind taqleed. They are blindly following some other scholar, which...
you can't call them scholars then. You can't call them scholars. That's definitely not the definition of scholars. If the scholars say, okay, I believe that, that's not scholars.
You're right. I mean,
scholar definition is over here, because that's your intellect tell you which scholars you have to follow. Okay, you can't follow the Quran, you can't understand. At that time, Sahabas, they actually used their intellect to judge the personality of the Prophet. Then they believe Allah. Otherwise, nothing Allah. There was no Allah everywhere. Because the personality of they chose the person.
Yeah.
So for our thing, after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is nothing else.
Yeah.
So I can't say those people are.
you know, I very strongly believe that had we had the privilege of living at the time of the Prophet, we would have no other way of approaching religion but to go and be in his company and do what he said is religion, because he was the representative. Now we've got to do our investigation. This is one of the problems with Muslims. See, as I said in my earlier presentation of the first session, sometimes people read the Quran and take the position of God, and sometimes they read the Quran, Hadith, and take the position of the Prophet. This is what scholars do. Scholars are scholars, they are not prophets. So the ordinary Muslim must differentiate between the two.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
I want to ask about this, the first category where you follow scholars. I just want to understand one thing. When you guys do the research, to me research is, is a profession, like you have different professions, one of the professions, the research is one of the professions. Okay, this is so, vast field that it's not possible to have the knowledge of all the topics covered in the Quran, that one single person can do everything by doing the research only. For example, you mentioned about the riba. I just want to understand, have you ever, or Dr. Anis have ever spoken to any banker, what it is and how does the industry works? Or you just do your research, the hadith and books, and you reach to conclusion? Because honestly, I haven't seen a really good answer to that topic on that. But have you ever discussed with any banker?
We keep engaging ourselves with bankers as well. We talk to them. But obviously, there can be no limit to the amount of discussions that you can have. But I agree with you that people normally don't do it. I also agree with you that it is not possible for any scholar, no matter whatever stature his is, who can claim that I have researched thoroughly all topics under the sky on religion, and I have definite views on all of them. So what I'm suggesting is that when that is a reality, then a scholar would also sometimes get down to, I won't say reduce himself to, get down to the second point, second category, because then he has no choice. And this is very natural. So that much for the key. Right.
Isn't the danger of following a scholar the start, could be the start of sectarianism? Because they all start, they would follow a very knowledgeable person, that is a scholar of whatever era they were in, and suddenly they become a different sect because they won't agree with the others, and that's how it started when the Prophet was defined and died, and there was a split straight away. So it was, and we were actually told not to make sects.
I quite agree with you. I mean, that is precisely the reason why we are broken into sects. And if you look at this suggestion that I've offered, if Muslims start following this line of thinking, then there will be only one category of Muslims who would feel good about describing themselves as Muslims totally, nothing else. It will just completely do away with sectarianism. And the reason why sectarianism is prevailing, is getting stronger and stronger, is that people are somehow being taught to feel strong about their commitment to their respective scholars. There is no way you can get rid of these jokes that take place every year in the West, wherein you're told that in one street of London, there was Eid celebrated on 3 different days. I mean, it is a joke. But, this is because of the same reason. Yeah.
When I just think about scholars, there are different scholars in Islam and the different interpretation they have regarding Quran. I'm a student and I'm just looking for someone who can just guide me in the right direction. And I've just discussed with the several scholars and they have different interpretations. Under those circumstances, what should I do? Because I am not an intelligent, I think myself I am a layman. And what should I do under those circumstances?
Third category, if you are frankly admitting that you talk to scholars and you simply don't understand what they're saying, I think you have a very good excuse. That is not what I'm saying. That is why I am not eliminating the possibility of taqleed completely. I think it is natural, it is understandable under some circumstances. But to make it binding on every Muslim, no matter who he is not what the real teaching spirit of Islam
One
is.
point I just said, I think one argument the people who propagate the taqleed is that if you don't ask people to follow scholars, people would cherry pick things from here and there to suit their needs. And I think one of the arguments they said that we try to stop that practice, where the practice of religion would become a joke because people would be picking and choosing things. But that is obviously.
Yeah, you're right. I did make a comment on it. I mean, to tell people to be careful.
Yeah.
They tell them to take their religion seriously. And by the way, why can it not happen that in order for me to make my religion easy, I decide that, for example, Maliki school of thought is the easiest, and I'm going for it.
Yeah.
I mean, who would stop me from doing it? And the other thing is, my very simple and honest question is that what is wrong with making your life easy? I mean, when I am following somebody blindly and I don't even know whether he's right or wrong, and when I know that the other person who is equally qualified is giving me a verdict which is going to make my life easier, why should I not follow the Quranic advice and the Prophet's advice? Yuridullahu bikumul yusr. God wants ease for you. Wala yuridu bikumul usr. He doesn't want difficulty for you. So why is it imagined that making your life miserable, difficult, tough is an ideal? Not at all. It is said about the Prophet, may God have mercy on him, that whenever he was presented with two possibilities or more, he would go for the easier, aisarohuma. So I don't understand this argument. I mean, it really is creating a very poor impression about Muslims, that they are going to pick and choose and they will make a joke of religion. I mean, they do not even know why they are following what they are following. So that in itself is already a joke. So let's crack a better joke, whereby life is easier. Right.
When I say don't you think scholars in themselves cause a lot of this jokes that happen in Islam?
Yeah.
Because the scholars are just interpreting the Quran in their own way, and then people are following them blindly. So do you feel that that's one of the issues in itself? There's too many scholars.
I think I would not blame them for what you're doing, what you're saying. Sorry, but I would blame them for a slightly different reason. They disagree, and they disagree because their own honest opinion is different from others. They have a right. I think they have a duty to disagree. However, my problem with many scholars is that having formed an opinion, they don't talk to each other. They don't exchange arguments. We do not find arrangements for them to exchange views. So quite the same way as it happens in politics, I think politicians are doing much better. Scholars, if you belong to a certain school of thought, they would hardly ever meet and talk about their views with others. And even if they talk, there is a hidden firm commitment that we are speaking just to let the other person know what our point of view is. And if he converts, brilliant. No chance here. Forget about it. No chance.
So see a scholar then who's got a blind point of view, see everyone that follows that person blindly, surely that scholar's got all the weight of all those people on their shoulders when it comes to their vision.
Yeah, but my dear, we need to let those people who are following them, that what they're doing is wrong. And that you can only do if they would listen to them, listen to you. One of the other things that they do is that when there is somebody who is following them, they try to make sure that their follower doesn't listen to anybody else. And for that, one of the great things that they do is that the other people who threaten to bring in a different point of view, they are criticized so strongly that the poor ordinary followers, they do not have within them any possibility left, any guts left to think about talking to those scholars. Let's move on to the next part, which I hope is going to be interesting. The understanding of those who plead for following a religion without using intellect I have presented. Now I am going to take these arguments one by one and present the counter argument for the arguments that have been presented to prove that we are not allowed to use intellect in Islam. So let's look at these arguments, these counter arguments one by one. The first argument was that believing in Al-Ghaib means believing in the unseen realities. The fact of the matter is that the Quran is mentioning the fact that believers are such intelligent people who don't demand realities to be first seen to be believed in. That is, yu'minuna bil ghaib means that God-fearing people are the ones who believe in the realities that they cannot see. Why? Because the arguments supporting the existence of the unseen realities are so strong and convincing that they believe. So it's not that they are having blind faith. Their faith is based on sound intellectual reasonings. Realities are of two types. There are realities that could be perceived by the senses and those that can't be perceived by them. We've got five senses: we can see, we can hear, we can touch, we can smell, we can taste. So there are things that we understand. I don't use even, you should use the word belief for it. There's things that we understand that they are real because we perceive them through one or a few of the five senses. And there are realities that are accepted on the basis of intellectual arguments supporting them. Love, intelligence, and gravity are some examples of the realities of the latter category. You see, if somebody says that my mother loves me, and it really is something which is great, deep, immense, and the person that he's talking to says that, show it to me. Now what is this question? This is a silly question, because love is not something that can be shown to you in the form of a box or a bag or a card. Love is something that you can see from the attitude, the behavior, the sacrifice of a person. It's not something tangible. It's not something visible. It's not something that you can perceive from your five senses. There are certain things that you can see and perceive from your senses, which, when they are put together, cause you to understand the existence of a reality which is intangible, which is invisible. Love is one of them. Intelligence is another such example. You see, if I tell you that I met a certain person who was very intelligent, and you tell me that, show it to me. I mean, what should I show you? His teeth? Or what? Should I show you his ankle? I mean, intelligence is something which is not physically observable. It is something that you infer from the behavior of a person. We know by dealing with some people that they are duffers. And we know by talking to certain people and dealing with them, that they are brilliant. Now, how can I show it to you? Well, should I do it? This is his intelligence. Would you like to share it? I'm drinking intelligence of my teacher. Obviously, it's nonsensical. So, likewise, I mean, science has proved, shown, and everybody believes that there is something called gravity. The objects, when you throw them towards the sky, they don't keep flying upwards and travel towards the moon. They come back. Each time you do it, each time they come back. And obviously, the conclusion is that there is something in this surface, in the earth, that tends to attract objects towards itself. This is called gravity. And obviously, it would be stupid, unscientific to ask for some physical object to be shown which is called gravity. So likewise are the beliefs. So I mean, this demand that you believe in the unseen is something wrong, is in itself problematic, and therefore the only reason why you believe in things you can't see is because of the arguments, because of your experience, because of the manner things are happening, you come to those conclusions. Why is gravity accepted by all intelligent people, but God is not universally accepted? Is a question that people quite often ask. If God is quite as available to the mind of an intelligent person for him to be convinced, why not? Well, I have a naive answer. If you don't like it, don't take it. But my understanding is that believing in God, which I feel very strongly, is more logical than believing in gravity. But the trouble is that believing in God carries a price tag. Sometimes it's unfashionable. Sometimes you are expected to do things after confirming your belief. You don't want to do it. There could be other reasons. If you start charging people for believing in gravity, I can assure you there will be millions of people who will say sorry. Each day, if you will say that you believe in gravity, you'll have to pay £100. No, I don't believe it. Because believing in gravity carries no price tag. It's something you can just say and finish. It's fashionable. You look intelligent. That is why you believe. If you were to be given certain testing times after you acknowledge an unseen reality and you can easily reject it, you'll do it. Why? Because it doesn't give you any problems. So the fact of the matter is that this view that the Quran says that yu'minuna bil ghaib, and therefore we have to have blind faith, is just not in line with the Quranic presentation, and we've already seen that the Quran emphasizes over and over again the use of intellect, and we shall see hopefully in the next session, next Saturday, when I'll talk about all three beliefs, that the Quran has presented arguments, intellectual arguments, to support the case that they should be believed in. The second question is, the second argument was that the Quran discourages us to ask questions. The verse that was quoted for the purpose is if it is properly read, the Quran discourages only those questions that are irrelevant and are asked only to avoid practicing what God has desired. Like some Jews did. The Quran mentions that Musa alayhi salam asked people of the book to slaughter a cow. And a cow is a cow. A cow is not a camel, nor a donkey, nor a hippopotamus. It's a cow. They should have gone and gotten hold of a cow and slaughtered it, and the job would have been done. But they were not interested. So they started asking stupid, irrelevant questions. What should be the age, sir? What color? What profession? What style? So all these questions are stupid questions. They had nothing to do with the requirement of slaughtering cow. That is what the Quran says, that don't ask such questions. And more particularly, this verse, when you read it in full, what you find is that the verse is saying that La tasalu an ashya in kuntum tasukum. Don't ask questions about things which, if they are going to be revealed to you, they are going to cause harm to you. In Wain tas'aluha, and if you are going to ask questions about them, hina yunazzalul Quran, when the Quran is being revealed, tubdalakum, they are going to be disclosed to you. What it means is that the Almighty is saying that when I am revealing my law, just concentrate on understanding what that law is. I know what your needs are, and I am giving this law Sharia to you in accordance with those needs. If you will ask a question, you know what's going to happen? I will answer it. And you know what that would mean? The answer will also become a part of the law, which I don't want to do it. I don't want to do. I want to keep your Sharia handy, simple, doable. I don't want to make it elaborate for your lives to be burdened by extra injunctions. That is what the Quran is saying. And look at the concern of the Almighty, that He didn't want the law to be unnecessarily elaborate for us to be burdened by it. And we Muslims, what we have done is that we have volumes and libraries of injunctions and laws and fatwas, which we think are all binding on us, even though they're just opinions. So an opinion of a scholar is an opinion. The Almighty's law was purposely required to remain brief and within doable, practically viable limits. And for that purpose, He stopped some companions from asking questions why the Sharia was being revealed. It was only for the injunctions of Sharia, and the Almighty says the reason is that if you will ask, I'll answer. And I don't want that when I answer, it should become a part of the law. It has got nothing to do with the concern that people are asking questions. So that's what the purpose was. Now, the third was that when the Quran emphasizes over and over again that a good believer is the one who says, I listen and I obey. I've already answered this question, but let's go through it. When one believes in a person as a messenger of God, he is acknowledging him as his representative. How can he ignore it? But what caused him to believe in the Prophet in the first place? The Quran mentions several arguments for it. You see, before you accept an individual as a prophet of God, you have to use your intellect to decide whether you believe or not. But after having done that, when you've accepted him as your prophet, it is a part of the idea, the package that you will follow him. It is logical, it is rational, intellectually sound to expect me, who has come from Pakistan only yesterday, that when I am here, I follow the British law. And I follow it blindly. Why? Because it's a part of the conditions that I've accepted before entering the territory of the United Kingdom. So I mean, it makes no sense that you say to me that, look here, find out what the law is, but if it doesn't appeal to you, don't do it. It's up to you. I mean, it's stupid. It's very stupid. So likewise, you have accepted an individual as the messenger of God. Now you've got to follow it. But before accepting him, you need to find out whether you are convinced. And for that purpose, I will tell you in the next presentation next week, inshallah, that the Almighty has presented arguments after arguments to prove, to convince you that Muhammad, may God's mercy be on him, is indeed the messenger of God. I am not saying that the arguments are 4. There are 4 chapters, 4 titles of arguments, wherein each title is followed by several arguments. And we'll talk about it. Why? Because, it's a big decision. You see, our case is different. We are all born into it. So, I mean, we don't value it, we don't understand it, we take it casually. But imagine that a person really has entered the fold of Islam and he was different. And he has actually seen those arguments. And then he says, now I've got it. Obviously, he will not ask this question as to why should I follow. Because that is precisely what he has done. After having done his investigation, he has now come to this conclusion, which is what he is expected to do, quite obviously naturally. Here comes the topic of the day: predestination. The Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, is reported to have stopped his companions from discussing predestination. It is said that once there were people who were indulged in this discussion, and he came out only to find that they were actually fighting over it. One person was saying one thing and the other was strongly pleading for the other understanding, and it was going on. So the Prophet, may God bless him, he stopped. Predestination has to do with a why. I'm trying to answer why. Predestination has to do with God's attributes of knowledge and justice. All attributes are perfect. All attributes of God are perfect. All of them are simultaneously functioning. See, God is knowledgeable, God is powerful, God is wise, God is just, God is subtle, God hears, everything. They are all perfect. They are all infinite, endless, and they are all simultaneously functioning. He is merciful. Now, in order to understand this simultaneous function, imagine yourself. We also sometimes feel compassionately inclined towards some people, but our compassion is small, tiny, and our compassion is short-lived. Soon after 10 minutes of a display of compassion, we are completely the otherwise of compassion. This is us. God is not that. He is everything that is described about him, all attributes, all perfect, and all simultaneously functioning. Now, God is perfectly knowledgeable about the future. He therefore knows what's going to happen in the future. God is knowledgeable. His knowledge is perfect. His knowledge is not incomplete or imperfect. Had his knowledge been imperfect, incomplete, he wouldn't have been God. He would have been something superior to us. But he is perfect. So the perfection of his knowledge means that he knows everything. Everything that happened in the past, everything that is happening right now, and everything that will happen in the future. I get terribly confused when somebody says, but I think it's right, that for him, past, present, and future are irrelevant. Allahu Akbar. This brain of mine, it is not good enough to be able to absorb it. But that's what God is. He is perfect. Now, likewise, he is perfectly just as well. Therefore, his knowledge won't force people to do things and make them accountable. He's also just. So when he is going to make you and me accountable, he will not make us accountable for doing things wrong which we did not do on our own independently at our own discretion. But he pushed me into doing something, and he said, then why did you do it? No. He created a situation. He just pushed me, dhakka-fied me into it, and said, why did you do it? So the answer is, sir, you pushed me. So, I mean, obviously, God, the just, fair God, how can he do it? So he will hold us accountable only for the things that we will do independently on our own, without being pushed, coerced, forced into doing it by anybody, by God, by his knowledge. Now, the Prophet guided, his knowledge won't force people. He is perfectly just, therefore his knowledge won't force people to do things and make them accountable. Got it? Now what will happen? On the day of judgment, we will be held accountable for the things that we did in this life. If there, God forbid, are going to be bad things that we did, then we will be held accountable, because even though God knew it from before, he did not force us to do it. His knowledge, prior knowledge of what is going to happen, will be no reason for it to be happening. He would not just know that A would do something wrong, but he would also know that A would do it freely, independently. Both are going to be there. So these two things are separate. They have got to do with God. They are the kind of information which we cannot properly and fully intellectualize. It is something which is beyond us. And therefore, the Prophet guided his followers to understand their limits. Yani, what I'm saying is that Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, was the guidance from God for mankind. In his capacity as guide, he also guided us to know what the limits of our intellect are. This is not unintellectual. This is not unreasonable. This is highly reasonable. To tell you that, look here, like your sight has limits. You can see. Don't stare at the sun. You're going to spoil your sight. Likewise, our ability to hear is brilliant. But if we start hearing, strong sounds of high volume, our ability would disappear. Likewise, we are intelligent, but our intelligence has certain limitations, like every other ability. And therefore, the Prophet guided us that, don't discuss it beyond a certain limit, because it is going to confuse you. You don't have the ability. See, when we say that we don't understand a certain thing, there are two possibilities. We don't understand it because we know that it's wrong. We don't understand it because we don't understand it. It's beyond us. A mathematician, an expert in mathematics, comes here and writes an equation. We, people who are laypersons for mathematics, we say that, sir, what you have written is what we don't understand, and therefore it's wrong. It would be downright stupid. On the other hand, if somebody writes over here 2 + 2 = 5, you would say, sir, we don't understand, it's wrong, and we'll be right. Because this second equation we know is wrong, and therefore we're pointing it out. The first equation, the only honest statement would be that we don't understand it. So, when you don't understand something, it's because you have your own limitations. Likewise, God is perfect. Many of the things that He has done, we can understand. And that is what He attracts the attention of our intellect towards. But there are a few things we don't understand. Like our eyes cannot see everything. Musa alayhi salam did have this interest in looking at God, but he was told that, look here, it's not possible. Just look at the mountain top and then see what happens. And then he reflected his, part of his tajalli, and the mountain was it perished. And Musa alayhi salam fainted, and he understood, got the point that living in this life we have certain limitations. Likewise is the case of intellect. When he stopped his companions from discussing predestination, it was not an indication of the fact that in Islam, intellect is not to be used. In fact, it was an indication of the fact that Islam tells us what is the domain of our intellect and where it should stop. Why? Because we ourselves, our intellect tells us that beyond a certain limit we can't think, and therefore we must stop there. So it has got nothing to do with the claim that Islam is against use of intellect.
Can I ask?
Yeah, please.
The incident of Musa alayhi salam, when he wanted to see God, you used the word tajalli. What do you actually mean by that? Is that physical form of God?
Notice the fact that I'm trying to use all words in English, but when it came to tajalli, I did not. But I don't know. I think it's a reflection of something which the Almighty.
Was it a reflection of Himself?
Yeah, I mean, it's a reflection of some attribute of Him. He does not appear physically. So something happened. Some special ability, some special attribute is what he showered, he reflected upon the mountain top. But this is one of the areas where I would say I would take refuge in the expression mutashabihat. It's one of those mutashabihat wherein beyond tajalli I can't use any word. So I very cleverly
Because we do believe that God does not have any physical existence.
I know he's not expressed it. I think on the other hand, this whole incident is reflective of the fact that he has. All that he said, he didn't say that Musa alayhi salam said that I want to see you. He said, Lan tarani, you can't see me. He didn't say that I don't have a physical existence. So it really means that he does have a physical existence, but it's beyond our reach. It should not be a subject matter of our discussion in this life. Like the Prophet clarified, that predestination beyond a certain point should not be a subject matter of our discussion. What are you going to gain out of it? You are limited, he is unlimited. What would you get it out of it? Except for the fact that you'll be amazed. Oh, okay. And obviously, either you will stop or you say, I don't get it, because this equation I don't know, it's wrong.
Will we ever be able to see God, like in next?
Yeah, then you have a very strong reason to believe from the Quran. The Almighty has mentioned, although that verse in the Quran is actually interpreted to mean something else as well, but the overwhelming understanding of verse in Surah Al-Qiyamah is Ila Rabbiha. They are going to look at Naziratun ila Rabbiha, something of that sort. They will look at the Lord. So hopefully, yeah. But there are many other things to be done before that point is reached. Quite a few obstacles. So, rubbing of socks. Rubbing socks while doing masa is a symbolic ritual. It's meant to remind the believer that when his feet are bare, he will use water. It's like tayammum, the symbolic wudu. While doing tayammum, we don't wash our face and hands. We remind ourselves that when water will be available, full wudu would be done. Likewise is the case with masa. So, your feet get soil from beneath, and therefore while doing masa, it should have been done from under your feet, is not really something that you can understand as convincing, because of the fact that masa was not meant to wash or cleanse your socks. It is symbolic, like tayammum is symbolic. It is meant to remind you that as and when you will have your feet bare and you will have water, you will wash it. So while this facility is available as a concession, just rub it. It's just symbolic, it's just reminder. It's not unimaginable how Ali radiallahu anhu could have made the statement he is alleged to have made. I mean, how is it possible that as wise a person as him could have said that, religion is not based on intellect, and he gave this argument, which argument itself seems to be very weak, and that man who really read the Quran so many times and is far greater in knowledge than all of us, who has read the Quran and has seen in the Quran so many times the mention of the fact that you use your intellect, could have made that statement. So it really seems as if that the statement is attributed to him, while the possibility that he made that statement is very slim.
So just a clarification I would ask. In the Arabic of this continuation that I read, the word used was rai rather than akal over there. So my understanding was that he was saying that religion is not based on somebody's opinion.
You're right, that word is used, but that word, the way it has been used is actually the equivalent of akal, the way we say. Opinion, other than the text, is an opinion based on your understanding, your reflection.